Yo, what's up, YouTube? This is your boy Jay from Keeping It Real, your arbiter of gaming news and commentary, hitting you off with a studio production video where you know this is your channel, where all gamers' voices are heard. With your boy Jay, always dropping the word. Keeping them other gaming YouTubers like, what you heard? And where you always know, we always keep it all the way real. So what's up, everybody? Just want to thank you all for checking out my studio production video today. And yeah, man, this one's going to be an interesting video that I wanted to do in depth about the prospect of the real reason that Sony is so ahead in unit sales. I wanted to break down the real reason of why they have done so well in the past of unit sales. Now, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I think the trends are changing, and that's more of a thing of the past, especially with the X coming out. But because of that, I wanted to talk about why they had been so widely successful for what largely is about 4 years, and why they've had such a huge they have a good lead on Xbox. What is the difference? Because if we sit here and talk about the great things that Xbox is doing, the great features and all of these great things, the great online, well, it stands the question to ask, well, what would be the real reason of why Sony's doing so well, or they had been doing so well, and that they're such in a lead right now? So I wanted to go ahead and break that down because it's multifaceted, and what a lot of people have to understand is a lot of these things are multipliers for other things. And you have to understand, in life, there's links and chains. So one thing affects another, in turn affects another, in turn affects another. So a lot of these things that I'm going to talk about are more or less not only just about that one factor, but it's about how that factor affects the environment where it multiplies and it grows and it evolves. And I'm going to do my best to try to break this down where you guys can understand it and it makes perfect sense. So, I'm going to start off with back at PlayStation 3. So you guys know when, you had PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. Xbox 360 was doing really well, but at the end, PlayStation 3 started garnishing a lot of credit, doing really well, excelling, and it goes back to what is just basic capitalism. When you create a competitive force, then you're going to have an equal reaction to that force. And that's a competitive nature of the free market in capitalism. And that's what you got when it came to the PS3. They rose to the occasion. So Sony rose to the occasion and started doing really well. And at the end, and they had a good amount of momentum moving forward into the next generation with the PS4. As well as Xbox, of course, had a lot of good momentum. So now I'm going to start breaking this down because moving on to the launch of both consoles, I think it's wildly understood of the missteps that Microsoft did when it comes to their launch and at E3. I mean, I think that was I don't think it's no secret that it was a monumental fail in the eyes of gamers, especially since the fact that, and I think one of the biggest things were just their price point being $100 more, especially at a time where we just had an economical fail here in America, especially. We just had a system crash here in America, a housing bubble, and Wall Street, complete crash. And a lot of America was, just trying to get out of that and get better. And pretty much the holidays of the launch consoles was one of those holidays where, you know, people were going to be looking for to get into the next generation of consoles. But I mean, a lot of people were looking at their pocketbooks too. And that was a huge thing where anything being $100 more was a big difference, especially when most people looked at it as, well, they didn't really know a lot about the consoles. They both were next generation, and well, except for one is a lot more cheaper. So I think that was one of the big pivotal things where Microsoft, along with the other missteps, that was one of the most huge ones, because number one, they didn't give gamers the choice to either have it just the console itself without the Kinect. They forced gamers into just having to buy a Kinect, even if they didn't want it. And then they had the price be $100 higher than their competitor. I think those two missteps was the one that led to their undoing in regards to allowing for Sony to have such a huge leap ahead of them. And what you have to understand, and this is digging into more of the real reason, is one of the most powerful aspects of console sales, especially when they first launch, is what are my friends playing on? What are my friends and family playing on? Those two, that narrative, once a hardware manufacturer grabs that narrative, it's almost impossible to get to turn that around. I mean, it's to the point where that is so difficult to turn around. That company who has that narrative has to be effing up hugely bad. I mean, like monumentally bad, before that could start turning around. So it tells you how much of an embedded, deep narrative that really is when it comes down to what are my friends and family playing on. And you have to understand that with the launch of Sony, they played it smart, man. You think about what they did. They launched in more regions, and they also had a lot of, of course, Japanese support, where there's a lot of Japanese people, man. And one thing about Japanese people, they're not like people here in America. There are people who they're very pro their own products. You know, America, we're a nation of immigrants, which is a great thing. But when it comes to loyalty in regards to our products as American products, not so much. You're not gonna see the same loyalty when it comes to our American products as other countries. Other countries, they are very pro their own products. They're nationalists. They're people who would, they're gonna buy their country's products over any other country. And that's a huge boost to Sony, along with the fact that you have a lot of Japanese developers who were obviously going to be on Sony's side. They were gearing up with Sony. So Sony already had home field advantage. They already had a demographic advantage. And they also launched in more territories than what Microsoft launched in. And they already had the more cheaper console. You see that picture that's painting there? That's already they were set up from the beginning to be successful. And you got to think about this. Those are factors that has nothing to do with how good their online is, has nothing to do with how good their games are. It doesn't even have a whole lot to do with how good their console is as a whole. This has to do with their image and their reputation and how they set themselves up geographically and socially, where they could be on top, and also financially, because they put themselves in a position where they're $100 cheaper than their competitor. So you have to understand, those were dynamics that were in place, not having anything to do with how well the PS4 itself performed, or how well the games were, or how well their internet services. PS4 launched in regions that didn't even have PSN. So that tells you, and they also launched with next to no games. I mean, they had Knack, I think Shadowfall, and a couple other indie games. So it really wasn't so much about games. It was about the factors that I'm laying out. And now moving forward from there, you have to understand that once it becomes a trend that, oh, I got an Xbox, my friend down the street got an Xbox, my family member, I got a PS4, my friend down the street got a PS4, my buddies are now, they're on a PS4 because it was more cool to get a PS4. You got to understand, that's a ripple effect. That starts to take hold. Sony being the in thing to do, Microsoft don't even let you borrow your games. Even though this wasn't true moving forward, Microsoft recanted on that. And that wasn't a thing, but it was too late. Their reputation was already done at that point. And of course, Sony ran with it. They ran with it all the way. And what made it even worse was obviously the slight power difference. And also developers looking at it from the standpoint that they felt that Sony had the edge on a little bit more power, and it was easier to develop for. So those two things led to a lot of Sony now in image wise looking as if, okay, well, I'm gonna go with Sony. And those are things that, again, don't have anything to do with how many games they had. They didn't have a lot of games. It didn't matter. It didn't matter at that point. It was all about image. It was all about, okay, the reputation. Now what we're getting, look at us. We're the good guys. We're where you should play. It didn't matter that they didn't have a lot of exclusives because the multiplats were just perfectly fine. Because remember, on the PlayStation, all the multiplats were a slightly higher resolution, right? And that was all to the good. And also, hey, it's $100 cheaper. So you got to understand that started to multiply. That idea of things started to take root in the gaming communities and the gaming industry and the gaming media. You got to understand, it's one of those things that once it gets in there, it is extremely hard to root out. Extremely hard to root out. Because, at this point, Sony is seeing it as, well, look, we've done all this stuff and we haven't released a lot of exclusives. They're just our power narrative that we are now having and established, just us being a little cheaper and just us taking advantage of Microsoft messing up. That's all we need, man. We've now got a foothold into the market. And the more and more as that became successful for Sony, the more and more Sony realized that they didn't really have to have a lot of substance. All they needed was the narrative. And they could sell consoles simply on just having that narrative that they've created. And they did a good job of setting themselves up to be in that position. Now that narrative is carrying them. And it got to the point where they didn't need to come out and talk crap about anything. They had a slew of fanboys that would do it for them. It got to the point that along with the fanboys, you would have the so-called gaming media that would parrot exactly what the fanboys are saying. So you think about that, how that multiplies and how that takes root into a gaming community. And all of these are factors that continue to explode the sales of the PS4. Because at that point, it didn't matter that the PS4 had subpar, network. It didn't matter that the PS4 took 4 years to get a, Uncharted, or none of their really main franchise that people were really looking out for still hasn't came out. Why do you think they did a slogan called "Greatness Awaits"? Think about that. Think about that. That's not my slogan. That's their slogan. Greatness awaits. That slogan sums it all up. Hey, we got great things coming, but guess what? In the meantime, you gonna buy it anyway. Because from just the reputation that we have and just our image, you would rather buy our console and just sit and wait than buy the competitor. And that's what that slogan says. And that's what it represents. And you got to understand, it's built off of foundation of these factors that I'm laying out. None of these factors having really anything to do with substance. None of them have to do with actual content. You think about, look at a good place to look, and it bears this out and proves this so much. Look at the PS4 controller. It was found out recently that when it comes to their rumble technology, they're so out of date. I mean, they're back in the PS3 days when it comes to updating their rumble technology. And that tells you just how much they don't care about substance. Their controller, it's better than the PS3's, but I think we all know, and I think anybody who is just fair and objective would know, and it's pretty much a fact that the PS4 controller is completely and utterly subpar to the Xbox controller in just about every way. And it's kind of funny, I see these fanboys, one in particular, but I don't give names, but he has the nerve to say that the Xbox controller having batteries, oh, that's old. How could it have batteries with an Xbox X coming out and it still has batteries? Like, what's funny, man, is I have a PS4, and my PS4 charge, a full charge on my PS4, doesn't even last 4 hours. Doesn't even last 4 hours of gameplay on my PS4, my controller. Before you know it, I'm back plugging my PS4 controller back into my PS4, and where I have to be 3 feet from it. So it just effectively turns back into a wired controller. So he acts like that's something advanced. We all know that the PS4 controller has next to no battery life, man, and it's really pathetic at this point. As well as the rumble feedback is pathetic and outdated. And this is something they need to do something about. Now, ideally, I would like it to be where it would have batteries in case to back it up, and also have it be wired, where you could connect it to and charge it both ways. I think that will be the ideal situation, me personally. But the funny thing is to act like that's actually, happen to use batteries is something outdated. What's outdated about that? Guess what? I could go more than 4 hours, well more than 4 hours on one batteries. And me having rechargeable batteries, I could, when I need to my battery is out, I don't have to connect it to my Xbox. I can simply just grab my other set of rechargeable batteries, throw that back in, and keep on playing for hours more. I don't know about you. I think that's way more effective than having to be forced to plug your controller into to your PlayStation and then sit there and stand right next to it and play. Nah, no thank you. But I'm just saying these are just some of the examples that Sony doesn't feel, or they don't feel prompted in any kind of way that they have to rise to the occasion to actually be about substance, because they've done so well in sales just based off of image and just based off a reputation that they've built. And you have to understand that is prevalent in everything that Sony is doing. If you really look at it, you'll see that everything they're doing is very arrogant, very defiant, very anti-consumer, because everything that they're doing is at a point where they feel now, hey man, it's their way or the highway. You know, you wouldn't want to go to the competitor now because we got the image. What about your friends? All your friends have a PS4, right? It's too late now. You got us, and that's it. You know, and you think about that. Now, a good example of that is that the proof of that is look at what they're doing with crossplay. See, crossplay messes with what my friends and family are gaming on. If you think about that, crossplay eliminates that now, because now it makes it where, well, it doesn't matter where my friends are playing or even where I'm playing, I can still play with my friends. See, Sony knows that was one of the pivotal keys to their success. It wasn't substance. It was once they gained the narrative of where my friends and family are playing, they ain't trying to lose that. This is the reason why they've been so defiant towards crossplay. And it's kind of funny to me where you see gaming media sitting there scratching their heads, not understanding why. No, they understand exactly why, what Sony's doing. They're just not going to talk about it. Because a lot of them, or most of them, are all pro Sony. They're all trying to back Sony, and they're biased for Sony. So why would they point out the obvious reason right then and there of how sad and pathetic what they're trying to do? They hint around it, but they don't just outright say it. And most of them never will. It won't be a thing where they'll just outright say what I'm saying here, which is the cold hard facts of the truth of the matter. They're not going to say that. But that's what I mean by this. This image and reputation that Sony has been perpetrated by the media over and over and over again. And you have to understand that, things like crossplay is a big part of this. This is the reason why, it's like pulling teeth trying to get Sony to do anything, any game on crossplay. Even the smallest of games, they ain't really trying to do it. They ain't trying to mess with it. Because they don't want to lose that narrative. They're worried about losing that narrative. They see the gains that Xbox is doing. So that's one of the huge indicators. You see this with backwards compatibility. You think about this. How anti-gamer or anti-consumer is to think that, well, I'm going to make the choice for you about rather if for you to be able to play backwards compatible games. I'm not going to let you make the choice. I'm just going to say, nah, you ain't going to get it. You want it, you pay for it. I'm going to give you a subpar streaming service where it's just depending on how good your internet is. And force you into having to do that and force you out to pay for it. You think about the gall that Sony has to do that and how anti-consumer that is. And then you have a lot of gamers and even some of the media backing that up. This is the problem. You think about how negatively impactful they really are when they've gotten you to believe that you having more choice is a bad thing. Think about the psychiatry behind that. They've gotten you to think as a gamer that, oh no, backwards compatibility, I don't need that. Who needs that? No one plays that. They've gotten you to believe that, even though at the same time, you think about this, when they first launched, all they did is put out remakes. Remake after remake after remake. That's all they did. It was perfectly fine then when they did The Last of Us remastered. That was perfectly fine for you to play that. When they did the whole remastered of all the God of Wars, that was perfectly fine. When they did the Nathan Drake collection, all that stuff was just perfectly fine for you to repay for all that stuff all over again. But for you to have the option to actually just play it free because you have all those games anyway? Oh, something's wrong with that. Who would play those games? Who would care? You think about the psychiatry behind that. How does that make sense? But Sony gets away with this over and over again. You know why? Because they put gamers in a position to keep buying their BS over and over again, even though it does makes no sense and it's anti-consumer. You'll still have gamers that will defend it because they're on team PlayStation. And that's the sad epidemic of the console wars. That's what it creates. It creates an environment where consumers are just ripped off and taken advantage of. This is what I fight against. But this is what's created when you have a company that's built on image and just reputation. They don't have to be responsible for those things. They can go on doing anti-consumer things over and over again, and they'll always have the fanboys of their side, as well as the media in this case, to back them up. And this is the perpetual malpractice that Sony has found themselves in, and over again, where they see it's a lot more profitable to be anti-consumer. It's a lot more profitable to not have to worry about trying to give gamers what they want or even give them a choice, because now they already got themselves set up to look like they're the good guy. Even though just about every policy and everything they're doing is anti-consumer, you'll get these gamers that'll swear up and down that no. You know what's funny that just came out recently? And I think a lot of people should already know this, that Xbox gaming service, when it comes to their customer service, is better than PlayStation and Nintendo. And I already knew that. I mean, that's pretty obvious to me, but that's yet another thing where Xbox or Microsoft is better on customer service. And we already know how horrendous Sony's customer service is. But the thing is that you got to understand that when you buy into that, the malpractice and anti-consumerism, then you perpetuate those very things that are the most negative in the gaming market or in the gaming industry. And it is these things is what's allowed Sony, even with a lot of their missteps and a lot of their discretions, to get away with it over and over again and still sell well month after month after month. Because it tells you just how important where my friends play and my friends and family play narrative really is. It tells you just how important image is. But I'm here to say that all of that BS is coming to an end with the arrival of the X. It's going to once again be about content and substance. It's going to be about what you provide for me when it comes to your graphics, when it comes to frame rate, when it comes to features. It's going to once again be about content and substance. All this stuff of the past, the X is putting an end to all of that. And that's the brighter future that we got in our horizon, because now they ain't going to be about all that no more. Now that's going to force Sony to have to change position and actually put up or shut up. And that's a great thing, because that's what we want. Because at the end of the day, gamers are going to win when that happens. So yeah, man, that's going to be the ending of this video, man. Once again, these are the real reasons. And do you guys have any suggestions or any thoughts on it, or your opinions? Hit me up. Let me know. All right, man. Until the next time. This is Jay. I'm always keeping it real, and I'm gone.